Mr. Frank Isola.
The crowd still loves me.
That's a lot of cheering for somebody who's tardy getting to Charlotte, but we'll talk about that later. We begin today with stunning news. The National Football League and Colin Kaepernick have settled their collusion case, and both sides have agreed to not comment further, so we will not immediately know, possibly ever, the amount of money, though probably lots, that Kaepernick and Eric Reid will be paid by the league for essentially colluding to keep them from being employed by member clubs. Frank, I'm here at the NBA All-Star Game. You know how many sports lawyers are around. Talk to some, and they see this, almost all of them, as an enormous takedown of the NFL. Is that how you see it? And ultimately, even if you do see it that way, what will it mean?
Now, this is what I call the Friday news dump by the NFL. How could it not be seen as a victory for Colin Kaepernick, who basically missed 2 years of his career? So that's why you mentioned it, Michael. Who knows how much money he could be getting in this settlement, because there is, as you said, a confidentiality agreement that they signed. You know, legal experts, they're saying, you know what? This is a draw for the NFL. I'm not buying it. They're avoiding a loss, and they're also avoiding not having to disclose emails, text messages, stuff that could be embarrassing to the league.
Right.
Absolutely. So you know what? The league is going to protect their owners. They're going to protect the shield, while, let's face it, they're also admitting on some level there was collusion here with Colin Kaepernick.
De facto admission of guilt, that they colluded, that Colin Kaepernick's freedom to express himself, in this case, in the context of, social justice, that it was so bad a thing, it was so offended them that they worked together to keep him unemployed in this context. And that is a hell of an admission, Frank. It ought to color further how we see the NFL. Bill Rhoden has written a book. A lot of us talk all the time about plantation mentality, and particularly in the context of the NFL and its owners and officials wanting to keep players under thumb and, if possible, deny them their rights. And that's what this is an admission of in a de facto sense. But I don't think it'll color anything. People want their football. They're not going to care in America. And the band plays on.
Well, let me ask you this. Eric Reid is involved in this, and he's already has a deal with the Panthers. Now, what is the future for Colin Kaepernick? Does he play? Maybe he joins the Panthers. Cam Newton is hurt. But maybe, some people are speculating, did he maybe agree not to seek employment from the NFL? So on the one hand, you have the NFL saying, there was collusion, but maybe at the age of 31, Colin Kaepernick is thinking, football, that's in my past. Now, what do you think the future holds for him?
Well, I don't think it involves playing in the NFL. I mean, just because these guys have to wind up paying some money out of their pockets and admitting this de facto guilt, it doesn't mean they want him, Frank. And you know how those owners are. This makes them even angrier in some cases to never have him. I think they will be stuck in their position. I don't see him playing in the NFL. I never saw it. I don't see it now.
It's really a fascinating story. All right, Michael, the Anthony Davis saga took a dramatic turn on Friday with the New Orleans Pelicans firing their general manager, Dell Demps, and promoting Danny Ferry on an interim basis. The move comes hours after Davis injured his shoulder in a win over Oklahoma City and then left the arena before the game had ended. Pelicans head coach Alvin Gentry described the situation as, quote, a dumpster fire. That's pretty accurate. And apparently ownership agrees with him. Mike, does this move coming 2 weeks after Davis has to be traded, does it make sense to you?
Wow. Nothing that has happened in the last 2 weeks, Frank, makes sense to me regarding any of it. So was this a strong reaction to Anthony Davis leaving the building last night? And if he was leaving the building to go, I don't know, get an MRI or seek a second opinion, would that be so offensive? And I don't know that that's the reason why he left. But if it is, are we talking about that being the offending move, or the inability to get him traded before the deadline, or just having him around now after the deadline passed? What is it that so offended ownership that they had to say to Dell Demps now, after the fact, time to go?
It's funny. Gail Benson, think about what she's gone through with the Saints losing the way they did in the NFC Championship game. Now this whole thing with Anthony Davis, supposedly she was upset that he did leave the arena. And obviously Alvin Gentry, you heard what he had said. Anthony Davis is no longer the lovable small market superstar. He's the guy that's impacting right now two franchises, both the Lakers and the Pelicans, and both of them are basically being sabotaged. Let's move on, though, to this point. Danny Ferry, right now interim. He's a Spurs guy, so maybe he will get the job. We're hearing David Griffin. We know David Griffin's connection
should be
with LeBron
considered
James.
for any job.
I love
any GM job. David Griffin, I would.
But
hire.
how about this name, Mike Zarin of the Boston Celtics? Can you imagine if he got the job there? Would that be good for the Lakers?
Isn't that a heck of a conflict of interest, or no?
Why is it? He's getting a job. If he gets a job, he's a qualified guy. He gets a job in New Orleans. Who's he going to trade with? His guy Danny Ainge or Magic Johnson?
Well, here's the other thing, though. We don't know what Boston's going to have left after they either disappoint everybody or thrill everybody and get to the finals, disappoint everybody, doesn't get to the finals. I mean, if Kyrie Irving is on the move and there's still talk of that, you're not going to let Jason Tatum go if you don't know you can keep Kyrie Irving. I don't know that Boston is going to be in the absolute advantageous position that people are projecting in this moment, Frank. But there's a lot of intrigue going on here, man. New Orleans, twice now, they've been involved in these situations. Remember the Chris Paul situation, which I thought was absurd?
Hey, remember, too, David Stern in October was quoted in Sports Illustrated
about
referring
Dell
to Dell Demps, calling him a lousy general manager. I think he was being a little unfair. And Dell Demps is the first domino to fall in this whole
Dell's
mess.
taking the hit for this. I'm not sure what, if anything, he deserves. For people who thought this All-Star break was going to include the dumping of Luke Walton as coach of the Lakers, think again. The Los Angeles Times is reporting that Walton will definitely finish the season. This comes as a great surprise to a lot of people like Anthony Kornheiser, who were certain Walton would be out by Monday. What does he know? And it's also a sign that the Lakers have to climb in a foxhole now with the people they have, players and coaches. Frank, what, if anything, does this tell us further about the state of the Lakers?
You know, Bill Plaschke in the LA Times wrote an interesting column today where he said, stories have come out now that LeBron wants to become an NBA owner one day. And this was Jeannie Buss's way of telling him, guess what? You don't own the Lakers. Luke Walton is staying. Now, on the one hand, it saves LeBron because all weekend long, he would have heard questions about Luke Walton. Is your coach going to lose his job? But by the other token, Luke Walton right now, why is their record what it is? It's because LeBron James has missed 18 games because of that groin injury.
Absolutely.
So that's the record. Now, the dysfunction, to be fair, has been caused by this whole Anthony Davis saga, and that also is in some ways linked to LeBron James. So LeBron is a big part of this. But to me, the biggest thing about that record is the 18 games that LeBron James has missed.
Well, the 18 games he's missed, I mean, suppose... Just look at what we think their record would be based on the first 18 games.
Yeah.
The Lakers would be solidly in a playoff spot. But now, for me, the takeaway is, Frank, Luke Walton is a damn good coach, period. I'm not saying you can do with the Lakers right now, especially with LeBron injured, what was going on, what he did in Golden State, further up north, the state, when Steve Kerr was away from the bench with his situation for a while, prolonged period. So, but I think Luke Walton is good enough to be coach here. Who is it that LeBron would want to bring in? And how can they afford to sort of start over when they are now in 10th place behind Sacramento and the Clippers, two teams that hate them and would do anything to keep them out of the playoffs? Why would you need more dysfunction, more transition than with firing your coach? I wouldn't get that. I'm glad they made this decision.
Yeah, the guys that are available right now would be Tyronn Lue, Jason Kidd. Then you're hearing if they do something in the offseason, even Doc Rivers could be involved in the mix. When I look at the Lakers, though, it's interesting. You have Jeannie Buss and Luke Walton, Kurt Rambis works, there. Then you have Kobe Bryant, Rob Pelinka. Then you got Magic. And then you got, LeBron with Rich Paul. It seems to have, like a bit of a circus-like atmosphere. And let's face it, right now they're in 10th, like you mentioned, a game under 500. Can you imagine if LeBron and the Lakers don't make the playoffs as a 34-year-old?
No.
How much of a nightmare is that?
I can't imagine it, Frank, but I perhaps better get used to the idea. Although I still think they're going to make it. I still think they're going to wind up in 8th. But how about a 1-8 series Golden State Lakers to start the playoffs?
Yep.
Wow, talk about circus atmosphere.
All right, well, speaking of LeBron, he's annoyed that his trip to Virginia last Saturday to watch Zion Williamson and the rest of Duke's talented freshman class was described by some as a recruiting trip. LeBron, who attended the game with his agent, Rich Paul, told ESPN that perhaps his agent is, quote, a threat to everybody and that they want to keep trying to jab my agent and my friend. All right, Mike, should anyone, and I don't know who it was, have an issue with what LeBron did? No, I certainly don't. I was at that game. The buzz when they walked in was unbelievable, Frank. But I also remember games I was covering in the college ranks. For decades, NBA, current NBA players. I mean, I remember, like Moses Malone and Julius Erving walking into some, they'd be in another city and they come see a game, an ACC game, a Big East game. And it's, oh my God, and they sit there and they talk to the player
afterward. The players were thrilled to play in front of him. People are so afraid of tampering. They are so tampering obsessed right now. That is the word I hate the most in sports today is tampering. People shut up. These kids were thrilled when LeBron James just took his seat and watched them play.
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure trip. It's also a business trip, though. Rich Paul is there. You know, a couple of summers ago, Rich Paul and LeBron had coffee. Now, Cam Reddish was going into his senior year of high school. They had coffee with Cam Reddish. Cam Reddish now plays for Duke. Just don't sit there and tell me that it's not a way. And every agent has done it.
Everyone is doing the same thing.
I'm not saying it's Rich Paul and it's LeBron. Right. Every agent has done this. They're going there to remind the players on Duke and maybe Zion Williamson.
Here we are.
Guess what? You want to be part of this group? This is my agent. Come join me. It happens all the time. My thing is, who is criticizing him? He's allowed to do that. He has the ways and means to get there. Knock yourself out.
Everybody's a publisher now. The moment you buy a phone, you're a publisher.
Yeah.
And so somebody's going to be critical of this. And I was reminded, there was a story told last night at the incredible Dwayne Wade roast. And I'm thinking, I think I remember Tim Hardaway and his agent, my late, great, dear friend, they were talking about, call Dwayne Wade. We got to talk to this kid. And this was a Chicago connection, okay? Both the agent and Hardaway and the camp of guys, Michael Finley, they were Chicago guys. And here was Dwayne Wade coming up, a young star in Chicago. It's like, hey, talk to this guy. See if he wants us to represent him.
You don't think David Falk leveraged Michael Jordan? Come on. And Patrick Ewing, of course.
Let me just say this. If there's an agent out there who's not doing whatever he can, using his or her resources to investigate and figure out who's available and when, they're not doing their job.
You're right.
Now that we're